What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NFL Betting Show here live at FTN Fantasy. Chris Meaney, Dane Martinez, and Sam Choudhury here with you for the next little bit, breaking down our favorite picks against the spread, our favorite props. We got some touchdown plays for you as well. If you are looking for some start or sit advice, we're here for you as well. This is, of course, a betting show, but if you leave your question in the chat, we will circle back at the end of the show and we'll answer some of those questions. Of course, if you have any betting questions at all, you can leave them there and we will discuss them throughout the show. Week 2 already here, fellas, and just a little look at the lines. Of course, you can get the best possible number over at ftnfantasy.com. Use the prop shop to get the best possible number, save you a lot of time, and save you a lot of cash. All of our picks are in the Discord channel. We put them in right away when we find the best number. So we're going to talk about some of our favorite picks here today, and we'll wrap up with maybe a couple dogs, because we certainly saw some upsets last week. Just a couple, actually. A lot of favorites did win, but the Bengals, as the largest favorite last week, of course, lost. And some people may be out of Survivor, but hopefully not. We'll wrap up the show with a couple Survivor picks. Let's throw it over to my guy, Dane Martinez here first. Dane, what's on your card? What are you going with here for your first pick?
Yeah, all right. The first pick I'll give you is the Houston Texans. I believe that's on Sunday Night Football. It is their home opener against the Bears, and I'm laying the number. I see it at some places at 6, at some places at 6.5. So give it to me, Houston, -6. You see it right there at -110 over at DK. And here's the deal. The Bears won their opener at home in week 1, but it was ugly. They did not score an offensive touchdown. They had a block punt for a touchdown. They had a pick 6 for a touchdown. And Caleb Williams threw for only 93 yards. He had less than a 50% completion rate. We hear that Rome Odunze is going to be out. All of this means for me, it is going to be very hard for the Bears to keep up with the Houston Texans, who I think are one of the better offenses in the NFL. We saw what Joe Mixon did on 30 carries. We know about CJ Stroud. And I think this is an important point here across the board, Chris and Sam, that week 2 is the home opener for a bunch of teams. In the same way that I like to ride with the home teams in week 1 in the opener, if it's the home opener and it's Sunday Night Football, I just think it is too much of a tall task for the Bears, who look like they still have stuff to figure out against this Houston offense. I think it's just too much of a tough assignment. I will lay the points under a touchdown. I think the Texans win by a touchdown or more.
Yeah, it should be a really fun game. Sunday Night Football, Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud. Sam, just quickly, as Randall chimes in, says Houston by 2 touchdowns. Mike in here as well, saying fade the Saints, but give me the Texans by 2 scores. Just quickly, Sam, what did you see from Caleb Williams? Too early to panic? It certainly wasn't a great first game from the rookie.
I mean, it is too early to panic, but honestly, I think this will sort of go into my pick as well. I mean, just from what I saw, if he didn't have this background coming in as a generational prospect, maybe the best quarterback of the last decade, just entering the NFL, I think we'd be looking at this team a lot differently. I mean, if this was just a rookie quarterback, and this is what we saw with a supporting cast of Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, we probably would have already been writing him off. It's just because it's Caleb Williams, and I still have high expectations for him for sure, but I mean, you can't really, we just have the 1-game sample, and it's not like they're facing some other quarterback on the other side. CJ Stroud, he got steamed up, to an MVP candidate. He's still, I want to say, is top 5 in terms of odds. And the Texans team, I mean, this is legit. We thought last year was maybe going to be a rebuilding year, but we saw them go up and after it into the playoffs last season. They have high hopes this season. So I think we are going to see Houston put it on them. And yeah, if I were to pick a side, I think Houston by at least a touchdown. So I think it's a pretty good number here at 6.
3 for 3 here, right? I mean, that defense can play as well. So where are you going, Sam? Start us off with your card.
Yeah, I mentioned it sort of with Dane's point here. I want to take the Jets at -3. It's -3.5, but you don't have to pay too much juice to get the 3. If they win by a field goal, you get the push there. But I think it's a pretty good bounce back spot for the Jets. The Jets are a team that I had been lower on than the market just coming into the season, but I don't really think our expectations for this team, regardless of what you thought of them, if you thought they're a playoff contender, win the AFC East, whatever you thought, I don't think it should have changed after the game against San Francisco. I mean, we did have high expectations for the defense. You don't love that they gave up 32 points, but San Francisco, along with the Chiefs, they're the top two teams in the league. So I don't want to look too much into that. We did see some garbage time in the fourth quarter as well. But, Tennessee, this defense looks great. I don't want to take anything away from Tennessee, but obviously they shut down Caleb Williams. But in a game where you give up less than 150 yards of offense and you can't pull out that win, I don't see how they plan to take on the Jets. And I think Chicago's defense is legit. I think they are going to be one of the top-ranked units in the league. But you look at the Jets defense, again, I said they gave up 32 points to San Francisco. We don't love that. But last year, even with the terrible offense, they ranked second overall in DVOA against the pass. And we saw Will Levis just look terrible. He doesn't have a great supporting cast either. We saw Hopkins limited, but Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas I do like, but he is a rookie. But on the day, he completed 19 of 32 passes for 127 yards, averaging 4 yards per attempt. He had 3 total turnovers, 1 pick six, and then a strip sack fumble. So I do think that for this Jets defense, we're going to see more of what we saw last season. We don't expect the Titans offense to look anything close to San Francisco. So even if Aaron Rodgers plays his conservative game plan and they just want to eke out an easy win, I think 3 at worst, they win a field goal. But this is another game where I can just see it being a blowout, especially if the turnovers come, which, the Jets defense, they were known for their turnovers last year. From what we saw, again, Will Levis, 3 turnovers week 1. So, yeah, give me the Jets here.
Yeah, I dig it, right? I'm a Brian Callahan supporter, and I think he could do some good things in this offense with Will Levis, but that was not a great start. He looked awful. You kind of downplayed how bad he looked in that game, Sam. He was pretty brutal. I don't know what he was thinking, tossing that ball at the end of the game, and he did that a couple times, just take the sacks. So Callahan did say that Hopkins would get a little bit more run, but it's such a tough secondary. Last week, we had Brendan Ayuk as a sit because he had to go up against Sauce Gardner. I feel the same way about Calvin Ridley this week. Looking at our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, it's one of the worst matchups for Ridley this week. Sauce is going to be on him. And they should be able to dial up at least a little bit of pressure. One thing I noticed in that game, they really couldn't get after Purdy and company, but they should be able to get in Will Levis's face and make him uncomfortable. So Levis and Callahan, they got their hands full again this week. I certainly dig that. And I see Dane, yes, and he's a Jets guy. We see a bounce back performance here from the Jets. I don't know if this is a trap, guys. Like 5.5 San Fran. I immediately bet it Sunday night watching. As soon as Monday night's game was over and San Fran took care of the Jets, it was 5. And I jumped in the Discord. I said 5. Like, this is a 2-unit play for me. I think that the Niners go into Minnesota and win by a touchdown. Then I saw 6.5 yesterday morning, and now I'm seeing 5.5 here today. So I'm not really sure how this is going. I don't care if CMC plays or not. Like, Jordan Mason's good enough to get 20 plus carries and run down the throats of Minnesota's defense. So we expect a little bit more from Brendan Ayuk. I do. He's going to be out there full go this week. McCaffrey said he's ready to go. It's really not up to him. And, if you're San Fran and Shanahan, why not just give another week here? But they leaned on Mason. They leaned on Debo to the backfield. They have so many weapons. And I understand Sam Darnold had a good game. And Dane, we talked about on the SiriusXM show that, stock up for him. Like it was a good game. Now he has a true test because he played the Giants last week. And I know he started 12 for 12, 13 for 13 or something silly like that. Ends up 19 for 24. But this is a much tougher test. I think the Niners should have a lot of success again running with Mason. I don't expect him to have that type of game every week when CMC's out, but the way that Shanahan his play calling and his schemes and opening up holes for whatever running back that he can put in his system at the time seems to have a lot of success that way. So yes, no, Dane trap 5.5. Like, come on, man, these guys are going to win by a touchdown. No.
Yeah. So half trap. Is that possible? Because do I think the Niners win the game? Yes, I do. I don't know if they cover this number, though. I was someone who talked to you, Chris, right, about that. I was a little bit impressed by what Sam Darnold did, not only his efficiency, but how he spread the ball around. And that's what we talked about, right? He's got weapons. He's got, a good play caller. And I think I could see kind of maybe the backdoor touchdown that gets us within the number here. This is Minnesota at home in their home opener, the first time the Niners go on the road. I actually see a couple of 5.5 point spreads for teams that I would love on the money line. You know, the Niners are one. I think the Chargers are one. I think the Chiefs are one. And I don't usually do the little teaser action, but I wonder about taking, say, the Niners and the Chargers and the Chiefs, who are all 5.5 point favorites. 6 point
Teasing them down
teaser,
to a field
and they
goal.
just got to win the game, because one of these guys, especially they're on the road, could they win the game but not cover the number? That would be my only kind of hesitation there. I do believe Sam Darnold looked good, but you are absolutely correct. It was against the Giants, and the Niners are not the Giants. So I like San Fran to win the game. I don't know if I'd lay the number, Chris.
Revenge game for Sam Darnold. This time last year actually was I'd say this time or around June last year. There was talk in San Fran about Sam Darnold had the best ball in camp between Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. And even though Trey Lance didn't look like anything when we saw him in the preseason, anything good, I still don't believe those reports. In fact, Niners beat writers said it was the best ball they had ever seen at camp. And I was like, you must not have been around when Montana and Young was tossing footballs around the field. So I'm going to take the Niners here. I think that they handle Sam Darnold and company. Let's go back over to you, Dane. Where are you going for pick number 2?
Yeah, I'm going to give you guys a total. All right. And remember, you got to go on over to FTN where they have it across all the books. Make sure you get the best of the number, right? Whether it's just them showing what the odds are or the prop shop. But I'm going with a total. I'm going with the Colts and the Packers, and I am going under 41 in this one. And quite frankly, I just have no belief in Malik Willis as the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, right? This offense was supposed to be Jordan Love and a number of young ascending weapons, allowing Jordan Love to kind of let the defense dictate where he goes and just kind of, make those decisions. I don't think Malik Willis, to be quite honest, is an NFL caliber quarterback. He's only played in like 12 games so far. He has no passing touchdowns in his career. He has never, ever thrown for more than 100 yards in a game, right? So I think, listen, if I'm the Colts, I'm going to key in on Josh Jacobs, force Malik Willis to try and beat me. And then on the other side, I love Anthony Richardson, Chris, right? And some of the throws he made were absolutely ridiculous in week 1, but they scored on 2 huge bombs, 2 like 40 or 50-yard touchdown passes. So that's kind of an anomaly as well. I think Richardson is still raw, and I just think this is going to be an ugly game where 1st to 20 should definitely win this. I don't think we get to 41. So give me the under here. I don't expect the Packers under Malik Willis really to get to 14.
And this line is moving pretty quickly, so I jump on it now. I think we could see closer to kickoff like a 39, a 38 and a half. I think people are feeling what you're laying out for them. And Malik Willis checks in with a 52% completion rate for his career and very small sample size, but he has not looked good when he's been under center. And tough go for all these Packers wide receivers, right? Jaden Reed finishes as wide receiver 1. Christian Watson finds the end zone. Some hype around Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs in there as well. It's from a fantasy perspective.
The other thing real quick, he was acquired by the Packers like the last week of August.
Oh, he's been there for a minute.
Dual-threat raw quarterback who's been there for a year and a half, right? He literally is getting to know these receivers and the scheme and the playbook as well, which is another complicated factor.
Yeah, and again, from a fantasy standpoint, like maybe Reed, just because they can use him in multiple ways and get some end arounds, some carries, quick slants, but really tough sledding for these Packers wide receivers over the next few weeks without Jordan Love. Let's head over to you, Sam. Pick number 2. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna have another bounce back spot in Mark Andrews. I was honestly, before I looked at any props, I was waiting for this line to drop. I was hoping that, the only thing that was in my mind was if I get 3.5 on a plus number, I'm going to take it no matter what it is. And that's exactly what we got. You can look at the receiving yards as well. If he clears this, his receiving yards is like high 30s, I want to say. So if he gets 4 balls, I think he clears both. But I like this one with the plus money. We saw obviously on prime time him get completely shut down by KC. But you look at it over his past 5 games, he's had more than 3 catches only 1 time. So it's definitely been a part of the defensive game plan. And I do think it is different with the presence of Isaiah Likely. Obviously, the other games, it wasn't him sharing the field with, what looks to be another elite tight end. But when you think about it, if Isaiah Likely, if he wasn't a tight end, say we got that game from Rashad Bateman, that it would just be another target earner in the offense. Do you think we would be getting a plus money on Mark Andrews? I feel like this is just more of a mental thing when you think about it. It's just Zay Flowers is good. I wouldn't say he's anything close to a top tier wide receiver. And I'm honestly just buying the squeaky wheel. Like, we act like these guys don't hear about it, around the media. Mark Andrews getting completely shut down. I think it's a game where they control from start to finish. And I do think it'll be a big Derrick Henry game. I think that's probably the biggest concern is how much pass volume is going to be needed in this offense. But I mean, they could throw Mark Andrews 4 balls in the first drive just to make him happy and pull him out. So, again, just this was something that I had bookmarked from the start. It was a lot more of the KC system than I think them trying to get away from Andrews. It's not like he was limited as far as the snap count goes. Remember in the preseason, he missed a handful of weeks in practice after that car accident. So there were no limitations for him. Him and Isaiah, I mean, he actually ran more routes than Isaiah Likely, but regardless, I don't think that after what we saw from Isaiah Likely, other teams are going to be double or triple teaming Andrews and just leaving Isaiah Likely wide open. Obviously, the Chiefs came out with the win, but I don't think it's going to be a successful game plan going forward. I definitely don't think the Raiders are going to be doing that. So, yeah, I think, again, it's more of a gut thing than analysis. I'm just going to be buying into the squeaky wheel. The offense gets going. They get a big win here against the Raiders. And, yeah, I like this at plus money a lot.
You're spot on about the Chiefs, like just taking away Mark Andrews is something that they've done essentially every time that they have played. I lean to the yards. I see what you're laying out for us, and there's a massive edge in our projections and the receiving yards. You mentioned also you like the 38.5, which I do see. We have them for 46 receiving yards in our projections as well. And I think you're also right to feel like they will lean on Derrick Henry in this game, but they're going to use Mark Andrews. I think in fantasy, if you drafted him, it's too late to really panic, to drop him, to make him available. You ride this thing out. I do believe, and I know Dane does as well, we're both team Isaiah Likely. We think he's certainly going to be a factor. It doesn't mean that they can't use both of these guys, right? They're on the field a lot together at the same time, lining him out wide. He's a great blocker. Right. They're both mismatches. You can use them both in the red zone. They don't have really anything at the wide receiver position after Zay Flowers. We saw 2 grabs from Bateman, one at the very end. There's really nothing else there. And Justice Hill's not going to get that type of work again because of what you said. They're just going to lean on Henry and they'll be up in this game and they should control it as 9-point favorites at home against the Raiders. So I like where you're going there. I also like Likely. I have him in the tracker already at over 35.5 receiving yards. I think both of these guys kind of live in the high 30s and the late 40s. I'm going with a guy that did ball out last week, and I think this number here for Cooper Kupp at 85.5 is going to be the last time we get this all year, as long as he stays healthy, right? We know that Puka Nacua is sidelined here, most likely more than 4 games. Sean McVay said yesterday he could miss more than 4 games. The earliest we'll see him is week 7. The Rams have a bye week 6. 21 targets and 14 grabs is something that we can't expect. But he did have over 110 yards. I look back at that 2021 campaign when it was just Cooper Kupp and Stafford's first year. And I know that we're a few years removed from that season, but he topped 85 yards in 16 of his 17 games. He had 100-plus yards in 11 games. He had 7-plus targets in every game. He had 10-plus targets in 14 of 17. He had 7-plus catches in 15 games. He racked up nearly 2,000 yards on 191 targets, 145 grabs, and 13.4 yards per catch. So, again, next time this week, if he tops this, it's going to be like 95. You remember, Sam, we did shows. He was minus 200 to score touchdowns. His receiving yard prop was like 105. And we were like, can you take it? He's probably going to do it. And he did it. So I'm jumping in on this 85.5. My one concern is the Rams offensive line right now talking to you. They could be down 4 offensive linemen. Stafford's going to chuck, though. He's always among the leaders in pass attempts. And I think that will continue. And one more guy I want to talk about, and I don't have the, for the banner here for those hanging out with us, is Demarcus Robinson over 40.5 receiving yards. He played 72 of 79 snaps in week 1. And according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, he has the 4th best matchup. He's going to be up against Starling Thomas, who allowed the 4th most yards per route run covered last week in week 1. And I know a very small sample size, but he really struggled. And Robinson is familiar with Stafford. He played a big role last year, and I know Brian Thomas is getting some love as a pickup, but he may play the Puka Nacua role, but give me the guy that has played a significant role over the past like 5 or 6 games for the Rams as like the kind of third option, and now coming in as the number 2 option. So I'm going with Cooper Kupp, and I looked at his touchdown prop. It's already like -115. So you can kind of forget about it, maybe put it into a parlay. But we're riding with Mr. Kupp at 85.5. And it looks like if you draft him in the 3rd round, you have yourself an absolute stud this year in fantasy.
Chris,
what do you got, Dane?
let me ask you something. I see that, the 85.5 yards. I also see most books, and I go over to the prop shop to see what the variance is, are hanging 7.5 receptions. Why do you prefer the yards as opposed to the grabs? Especially because, you mentioned the offensive line, right? Could be an issue. I could see Cooper Kupp getting a lot of catches with a relatively low ADOT, kind of get Stafford getting the ball out quick to Cooper Kupp. So I just wonder, why did you pick his yards as opposed to, say, over 7.5 grabs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I just feel like, as I mentioned with the yards per catch, it's like 14 per catch. Like, is a guy that he's such a great route runner that, sometimes it only takes like 4 or 5 to kind of get to this number. I'm sure there'll be maybe some quick throws for him if that offensive line can't hold up. We'll see heading into Friday what the reports are for him. Regardless, I'll still be on him. And again, it just takes like 1 or 2 grab, those like the tippy toe stuff on the sidelines that we saw last week. Right. This is the thing. Those are like 25-yard grabs right there. So 8's a lot. Probably gets there. I don't think he's going to get 20 targets, but I'd say you could ladder him up to like have some fun with him to maybe 10 catches and 100 yards or something like that. Maybe score a touchdown. You get yourself all of a sudden a 4-1 same game parlay ticket or something like that. Dane, what do you got for pick number 3?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to give you guys a prop. It is a rushing prop. I'm going over to Detroit and Tampa Bay. Give me the over on David Montgomery. Now, if you go on over to the prop shop, you see a little bit of a range. Some books as high as 56.5 rushing yards. Some books as low as 54.5 rushing yards. So if I'm going the over, I'm going over the lowest number, and that is 54.5. I went on over to Stats Hub, right? And in week 1, the Detroit Lions had the number 1 success rate in the run game. Their success rate was like over 67%, which means they are kind of converting on 3rd down. They're getting a good chunk of what they need on 1st and 2nd down. And by contrast, the Tampa Bay Bucks run defense was bottom 10 in the same stat, right? So David Montgomery in week 1 had 17 carries, 91 yards, averaging 5.4 yards a carry. I think the conditions will be at play for Montgomery to be successful again. He had 91 yards in week 1. I only need him to get to 55 in this one, and the Detroit Lions are more than a touchdown favorite over the Tampa Bay Bucks. And as you know, when you look at the Detroit kind of backfield, right, Jahmyr Gibbs is more of the outside runner, the explosive runner. If the Detroit Lions are up, the closer is David Montgomery. And so I think if they are up like they are favored to do, he will get those additional carries in the 4th quarter, the way they never got in week 1. As remember, it was Detroit that had to come on back to force overtime. So the game script was slightly different. So I think the conditions are there. We know the Lions have that great offensive line. People think about Gibbs, but I think he's the shiny toy. I think David Montgomery is really the one who will punch Tampa in the mouth. I think he gets 55 yards on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. He is the closer. Especially saw it in the overtime game, right? They just leaned on the ground game and ran all over the Rams, and he finished the game off for them. So Montgomery over 54.5 rushing yards. That number over at Bet365 -110. Let's kick it back over to you, Sam. What you got?
Yeah, this is another plus money prop, which I think is pretty wild when you see trends like this and you get a plus money number when honestly, I mean, when you look back to last season, this is probably not the expectation we had for Chase Brown, but we were probably disappointed with his usage in the first game. But now we're getting 2.5 rush attempts at a plus number. So going back to last season, obviously with Joe Mixon splitting the backfield instead of Zach Moss, he had 3+ carries in each of his last 6 games, and he had a 30+% snap share just one time. So again, like I said, we were probably disappointed with Chase Brown. We thought it was going to be more of a 1A, 1B, and he only hit 33% of snaps in week 1. But he never hit that. Like I said, the last 6 games to close out the season, he had a 30% snap share just one time, and he was hovering around that 20% all the other 5 games. Again, so coming into this season, 7th game in a row, he just barely gets it. at 3 carries. And I want to say since he led the week in PROE, so there wasn't a lot of volume for either running backs. Obviously, Zach Moss did dominate, but I think that we are going to see more of a normal offense. It is pretty scary with the Chiefs. I mean, we saw the Ravens completely get away from the ground game in the season opener, so that could be a risk. But I don't know, a plus money at 2.5. I do think that I think 33% snap share is probably his floor. And if he plays 30% of snaps, I think he gets at least 3 carries. You can also look at the 5.5 rushing yards. Again, if I think he gets at least 3 carries, I think he clears the 6 yards on the ground. You have a better out there which he can clear 6 carries on, or 6 yards on the ground with 1 carry. But at the plus number, 2.5, again, 7 straight games, and you're getting a plus money. And he does have a bigger role than what we saw from last year. So yeah, I'm buying Chase Brown. Again, I don't think it's going to be a huge role, but 3 carries, I think he gets there.
I like this bet too, and I'm actually Team Moss, and I'm not Team Moss in terms of talent. I just know that he's going to be the lead in the first down, second down running back. He's going to get the goal line work. I know that because we had Jay Morrison on the Sirius show a couple weeks ago, and he told us that. I kind of had the lean, and Chase Brown was one of those guys that just really rose up draft boards like into the top 30 at the running back position, especially in best ball. And I was just like, I don't know. Like now Moss is a value because of what I said, the first and second down stuff. But Chase Brown over 2.5 rushing attempts at plus 115. We have him for 6.1 rushing attempts in our projections and 25.7 rushing yards. So I agree. I think there's certainly an edge there, and maybe some overreaction because Moss did dominate the snaps. He did dominate the touches, especially inside the red zone. The Chiefs or the Bengals offense is completely, it's gonna be tough to figure out because I know it was week 1 without T. Higgins and Chase was limited, but it certainly looked like they missed Brian Callahan as a play caller. The play calling was really, really weird. So maybe they go into Arrowhead and try to slow it down a little bit. Joe Burrow is 3-1 lifetime against Patrick Mahomes, so maybe he has some success against KC and company. Let's kick it back over to you, Dane. You got one more for us?
Yeah, sure. I gave you a side. I gave you a total. I gave you a prop. I'm going to give you another prop. This time it's an anytime touchdown prop. And I go to the Los Angeles Chargers. Give me Gus the Bus Edwards to get into the end zone. It's at plus 145. And I checked Prop Shop because there are other books that have it as low as plus 160. So an extra 15 cents of value there if you do ahead and get this over at FanDuel. And here's the deal. Okay, we know that the identity for the Chargers is going to be run heavy. And similar to how Sam is, pivoting to Mark Andrews after the Isaiah Likely, we saw J.K. Dobbins pop off in week 1 for the Chargers, right? He's one of the most heavily added free agents on the waiver wire when it comes to fantasy. And people are thinking Dobbins. But even so, Gus Edwards had more carries in that game than J.K. Dobbins. I think it was 11-10. Gus Edwards is still probably the goal line back. He had that role so much with the Baltimore Ravens. He is the guy who punches it in from inside the 5. And quite frankly, they are playing what I expect to be the absolute worst team in football in the Carolina Panthers. In week 1 against the Saints, the Panthers allowed 180 yards on the ground, almost 5 yards a carry. And now you bring in Harbaugh, Roman, these 2 backs and that identity. I think the Chargers will take their show on the road, will be able to run against the Panthers. And when everybody's on J.K. Dobbins and the J.K. Dobbins touchdown prop is like plus 150, you can go to Gus Edwards, who I think has that role. And even if JK is the hot hand, Gus will still get that goal line work. I think he gets into the end zone. Heck, 18 different Saints got into the end zone against this Panthers defense in week 1, right? So why can't Gus the Bus do it here in week 2? Give me the Gus Edwards at plus 175 to get to pay dirt.
I'd say they both find the end zone. I could see a scenario where Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins both find the end zone. The Carolina Panthers allowed 21 rushing touchdowns to running backs last year, which was the most in the NFL. And as you alluded to, 47 points and 180 yards on the ground is what the Saints put up against Carolina last week. And this team hasn't shown us anything in quite some time. So I do dig that pick there for you. I kind of skipped me, so I'll wrap up here with the final 2 picks that I have. One's Jameson Williams over 43.5 receiving yards at minus 114. We hit this one, I think, in the first or second series last week. on Sunday Night Football. We actually had over 40.5 rush and receiving. I know that JMO gets a couple carries sometimes, some end arounds. I didn't find a rush and receiving, so I'll just take this one. I've been talking about him all offseason. I feel like we could feel the breakout coming towards the end of last year. He had the 2 touchdowns in the conference championship game against the Niners, and he scored the touchdown last week. I don't expect him to put up a similar stat line. Like I'd say, like what we talked about earlier, Sam, with the Chiefs taking away Mark Andrews. I think the Rams, like they were just so burned by Amon-Ra St. Brown in that playoff game. They did a good job of taking him away, but it did leave a lot of one-on-one for JMO. And what we saw at Bama is this guy can beat you one-on-one. He's got some speed. He scores a ton of touchdowns, 40-plus yard touchdowns we've seen multiple times. It kind of reminds me of Deshaun Jackson, right? He may be very boom or bust this year. He may only have 45 grabs this season, but he could have 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. Like I really believe in the ceiling that he has. Over his last 7 games, he's averaging 60 receiving yards. He's got the 3 scores in his last 2 games, and he had 9 targets, 5 grabs, and 134 total yards in week 1, which was a career high across the board from him. In his first year, he had the knee injury, so he didn't touch the field till week 13. Season's lost then. In his sophomore season, he was suspended for the first 6 games, so he was behind the 8 ball then. This year, he's been part of the first-team offense. He's been running with the ones. He's very much a part of this squad. I know there's a lot going on, Montgomery and Gibbs, and you have Laporta and Amon-Ra, but he can do this on like one catch. And the matchup against the Bucs is good. They were top 10 last year in receiving yards and receptions allowed to wide receivers. And let's not look into last week too much because Jaden Daniels didn't even really push the ball down the field in that game. And speaking of Jaden Daniels, I'm going in on Brian Robinson Jr. over 13.5 rushing attempts. Actually like the rushing yard number 2 at 52.5. Only 12 carries last week for 40 yards, but they were down in that game from the get-go. Basically a 2-score game for them the whole time. Against the Bucs. Now they play a team called the New York Giants, who, again, are just not good. Daniel Jones, more touchdowns to the opposing team than to his own squad since he signed that $160 million contract. And listen, Jaden Daniels ran 16 times for 88 yards. That is unsustainable. That cannot continue. And if you're going to continue to do that all year, dude is going to get hurt. His helmet flew off like 3 or 4 times in that game. It's just, it can't happen. It was very much like Lamar in that first game. And I said that about Lamar, that is unsustainable. He's going to get himself hurt. And then yesterday, Dan Quinn says the same thing. He cannot run that much. We have to scale him back just a little bit. We understand it's in his nature, design runs. He's a terrific runner, but I think they lean on BRob here a little bit. Against the Giants, we have him for 15 rushing attempts in our projections, nearly 60 rushing yards. So in a matchup against the Giants, who did struggle, Aaron Jones had 94 yards on 14 carries last week. So I'm going to lean on BRob here at over 13.5. So we have JMO at over 43.5. We have Kupp at over 85.5. We have the Niners here to win by 6. We have Chase Brown at over 2.5 rushing attempts. We have Mark Andrews at over 3.5 receptions. And by the way, Sam, you talked Randall into Chase Brown because he immediately went in the Discord and said over 5.5 rushing yards minus 125. Thank you, Sam Choudhury. I know he's been hanging out here. So he jumped in the Discord and hooked up. You talked him into that one. We have the Jets at 3 here, minus 3. Also, the biggest edge in our NFL betting model is the under in this game, under 41. And it's a 12.23% edge. Anything over 10%. 7-2 last week, so a good start for the model. We have the Texans against the Bears to win by 6. We have the under between the Packers and the Colts, and we have an anytime touchdown here for Gus Edwards and also Dave Montgomery over 54.5. So there you go. Let's just take a quick peek again at the schedule. I'll toss to you here first. Dane, if there was a dog, people love dogs. If there was a dog, who do you think that dog is? And give me a survivor pick. Where are you leaning?
A dog to win outright or with the number?
Sure. Outright. Give me one outright. I know these are spread numbers here, but yeah, outright, like an upset, potential upset that you see this weekend.
Sure. You know, it just looked so bad for the Cleveland Browns last week. But I still do believe in that defense. You know, I know it's really bad and all sorts of stuff's going on for Deshaun Watson, but Jacksonville wasn't really that impressive either. I know they could have gone up by 2 scores and ETN fumbled, but I'm not a complete believer in Jacksonville just yet. And I still could see a path where Cleveland kind of punches them in the mouth a little bit, brings their, brings the lunch pail down to South Florida and actually gets the job done. I think, it looked really bad in Cleveland, almost as bad as it did in Chicago, but I have a little bit more confidence that the veterans there in Cleveland can turn it around a little bit. And I've never been a believer in Jacksonville. So I think the Browns, who are 3-point dogs on the road, they have a chance to win outright.
What about Survivor? You're going to just take the chalk in Baltimore, or is there another option there for you this week? Like maybe the Texans or the Eagles?
I think they're home opener. I think it's prime time. I think they're not going to lose that game. We talked about it. I'm laying the number 6, right? So I definitely think they are going to win. And then the Chargers, the Carolina Panthers are bad, in my opinion. It looked horrible. And the way they were allowed the run to New Orleans and the way the Chargers are looking to run the ball, I think the Chargers will get it done. So Chargers and Texans would be some Survivor picks for me.
Where are you going, Sam, as a potential dog here, an upset, some team that you feel will break hearts?
Yeah, I actually had the same pick as Dane for the dog in Cleveland. I mean, this is assuming that you can't go to the Rams as a dog at +1 against Arizona. I think that's an easy one if they were a dog. But yeah, I mean, this was a game that I was sweating pretty hard. I had Miami -2.5 again. Like I said, I want to get through that field goal if I can. If you're not laying too much juice, but I mean, what can you say about this this Jacksonville offense just looked terrible. I mean, I was shocked that they were leading. I think it was more Miami beating themselves up. But, I mean, just the second half alone, we just saw them trying to – I mean, it was a really costly fumble that cost them the game with ETN. But I just wasn't encouraged from what I saw in this offense. Trevor Lawrence, I mean – I did have high expectations for him last season. I mean, and he just looks like what we saw last year. He's just – okay, he can't always. I mean, he's just not a quarterback that can bring his team from behind, or he just seems to crack under pressure. And I know Cleveland didn't look great against Dallas, but I mean, Dallas was great to close out the regular season last year. I don't think Jacksonville is nearly in the same tier as Dallas. And again, Cleveland was favorites against Dallas. I don't think we should completely overlook that. So yeah, I think I'm going to have faith in that defense. I think that defense is going to look a lot better, similar to last year. And I don't know how Jacksonville's offense is going to hold up. So they would be my favorite dog as well.
Look at us. Yeah. Look at us. I like them too. I like them too. Really? I didn't know where you guys would go. I think from a spread standpoint, I know Mike's not going to want to hear it, but I think the Saints could hang with Dallas and maybe keep that within a touchdown. Looking back at some of these larger spreads, like I agree with you, Sam, on the Rams. I definitely think the Rams can go in. They've had a lot of success, Sean McVay and company, against Kyler and Arizona, but we'll see what happens with the offensive line. But the Saints at +6, I can see that moving to 7. I already see 6.5 in some spots. I think the Bucs could actually hang with the Lions, just a touchdown.
I love the Bucs. Yeah, I love the Bucs because like
backdoor cover, baby.
Yeah, I mean 7.5. Yeah, 7.5 is crazy. Like I felt like the expectations were already low coming into the season for Tampa, which I really didn't understand why. Like, yeah, maybe if you don't fully buy into what Baker was doing in the second half of the season, but when you see week 1, he picked up right where he left off. So like, why is this still? I mean, it feels like a trap. I'm just looking at this number, like, why is it 7.5? Like, I want to give out 7.5. It's like, I'm like, well, it's like, what am I missing here? Like, Tampa Bay looked great. They look just like they did last season. So I don't know what I'm missing there. Maybe that'll end up being a play, but I'm with you on Tampa for sure.
Playoff game was an 8-point. I think it was 31-23, the playoff game. So Detroit did win that playoff game by 8 points. But I'm with you, especially I think the backdoor cover could be live here, getting you to within the number.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think the Bucs had the ball at the end of the game with a chance to tie that, and I think there was a Baker pick. But you're right about Baker. I mean, not only did he finish 4th in passing yards, he had the 4 touchdowns. I went back and looked because I was like, man, Baker was fantasy relevant down the stretch, wasn't he? And he was. He's had 2 passing touchdowns in 7 of his last 8 games and 10 touchdowns total in his past 3. So he was really building rapport with Mike Evans and Godwin. Both of those guys scored a touchdown last week. Jalen McMillan looks like a nice little player. It looks like they have something with Bucky Irving, kind of a change of pace guy with Rachaad White. My biggest issue is I don't like their secondary, and they do give up big plays. So they will have to go back and forth, most likely, if Goff is slinging it around the field. And by the way, Goff didn't look fantastic in that game either. Okay, we're going to get out of here. There was one starter sit question. What's up, guys? Missed out on Likely and Parkinson. Any tight end streamers you like for week 2 and possibly beyond? Randall jumps in here and says Jordan Atkins with Njoku out. I think that's a decent dart throw. Taysom Hill may have been dropped. Hayden Hurst is actually a guy that I picked up in a 14-team league. I lost Njoku, and I have TJ Hawkinson on IR. It's a dynasty league, so I like the call on Hurst. It's a fun revenge game for him, but they may not pass a lot. But, you know, TB12, BB6, you know it. You're in a tough spot, dude. You're really looking for a tight end that potentially could score a touchdown. Like Kraft is without Love, so I don't really love that. Do you have anything, Dane?
How about a Hunter Henry?
It depends. It depends. I mean, like it all depends on league size. Like if a guy like Hunter Henry would be available. So yeah, definitely dependent on leagues. I actually think Tucker Kraft's a really good one that I completely forgot about. I mean, it is a tight end position. We just want guys on the field. Like Tucker Kraft was a clear tight end one.
Already passed Musgrave. Yeah,
exactly. So like that's a pretty decent one actually that I didn't think about. So
MLB Dream, what up, brother? Is saying, what about Parkinson? I would say though that the question said that he missed out on Likely and Parkinson, right? So I do like Parkinson. I picked him up in a league because listen, if Demarcus Robinson is going to get more opportunities, so could Parkinson, for the same idea that Puka Nacua is down and the Rams will continue to sling it. So if Parkinson is available, that's definitely another option. So says MLB Dream.
Rich, I hope you're right about a James Cook touchdown. I took the over 3.5 touchdowns for him this season, and I don't know, man. Josh Allen may just steal all those touchdowns. So I'm hoping that he finds the end zone a couple times. Maybe there's a game where he gets 2, and then we just need a couple more. But I definitely we haven't been talking Thursday night, and you're watching later. We don't want to look too silly here, but I like James Cook over 14.5 rushing attempts for that game. I think they continue to lean on the ground game there with Joe Brady under center. Appreciate you guys, or not under center, calling the shots. Appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. Smash the like button. Subscribe. We'll be here every Thursday giving our favorite picks and props and spreads and totals. Check out the NFL betting model. I have links inside the description of this video bringing you to the NFL betting model, the prop shop, the parlay calculator, the bet tracker, Discord channel where we talk bankroll management and all that good stuff. So good luck this week. Let the winners be yours, and we will talk to you next week. Cheers.